On October 15, 2025, Brussels sounded like a command bridge. Doors sliding, translators sprinting, cameras blinking in bursts. In the middle of that controlled chaos, Germany stepped out and dropped a figure that cut through the static.
Amounting to over 2 billion.
More than $2 billion in fresh military aid for Ukraine. Not theoretical, not under consideration. Signed, sealed, pointed toward the front. The announcement carried the weight of timing as much as money, landing during an EU-NATO defense summit and just as Russian missiles were once again hunting power plants and apartment blocks. It was the kind of move that turns a corridor rumor into a new reality. The location mattered. Brussels isn't just where European policy gets written, it's where it gets measured in crates, pallets, and serial numbers. Confirmed by Germany's Ministry of Defense,
it will contain missile defense systems, state-of-the-art radar technology, and ammunition.
And echoed by wire services that don't quote rumors, the package wasn't vague or poetic. It had parts, it had priorities, and, crucially, it had a logic. More air defense, tighter integration, faster kill chains. If geopolitics were a chess clock, someone just hit resume with a firm thumb. Germany called it a long-term security commitment, and the phrase felt deliberate. Everyone has learned that single-shot announcements make for nice headlines and poor winters. Russia's strategy is seasonal. Bombard civilian infrastructure in the cold, throttle industry in the warm, and hope fatigue does the rest. Germany's answer was structural. Additional Patriot air defense batteries, IRIS-T SLM and SLS interceptors with their radars, precision-guided artillery munitions, anti-tank weapons, and the communications and electronic warfare gear that ties the whole machine together. It reads like a shopping list. In practice, it's an ecosystem. Start with Patriots, the long pole in the tent. They're the systems you park near cities and strategic nodes because they can catch big, fast, and ugly. Patriots aren't just missiles. They're a conversation between radar and software happening at terrifying speed, with a human in the loop who has to make a call with seconds to spare. Now drop to the middle and lower tiers. IRIS-T. The SLM variant handles medium-range threats. The SLS family hunts low and quick. Think of them as the midfield that breaks up attacks before they ever threaten the goal. The radar package cues the interceptors, and the interceptors do something very prosaic, but beautiful. They turn potential disasters into harmless sky confetti. No system is perfect, and no, we don't name our systems after birds because they're peaceful. But the overlap between Patriot up high and IRIS-T in the middle closes the kind of gaps that cruise missiles and drones love. If Patriots are the sledgehammer, IRIS-T is the fencer's foil. Quick on the wrist and unforgiving of sloppiness. The power of this package isn't only in the launchers. It's in the nervous system Germany is paying for. Communications gear and EW suites sound like backstage tech, but they make or break the show. Secure radios mean batteries can share tracks without shouting over each other. Data links mean a radar on one side of a city can feed a firing solution to a launcher on the other. EW tools jam, spoof, blind, and confuse. Digital sand in the gears of incoming threats and the systems that guide them. If you've ever watched a conductor cue an orchestra with a flick and seen 100 people move as one, you understand the goal. Music optional, missiles not. Precision-guided artillery munitions round out the picture in the least glamorous but most consequential way. Air defense is half the story. The other half is counterpunch. When you can find a launch site, a fuel truck, or a warehouse quickly, a guided round makes that location's next 2 minutes more exciting than the owners would like. Add anti-tank weapons to bloody any armoured columns trying to capitalize on chaos, and you've built a system that punishes aggression, not just absorbs it. It's not flashy to say supply chains will have a hard time, but military history is essentially a multi-volume complaint about supply chains having a hard time. Context matters, and Germany brought context. Inside the EU-NATO summit, defense ministers did not need a map to understand why this was urgent. Over the preceding weeks, Russian missile and drone strikes crept back toward winter intensity. More raids, longer sirens, the depressing déjà vu of grid substations struck for the third or fourth time. Ukraine's layered air defense has improved dramatically. The Kremlin, for its part, accused Berlin of direct escalation. It's a familiar line, a little like the neighborhood loud drummer calling the noise complaint an attack on culture. There's a serious point beneath the theater. Russia wants to set the rhetorical frame where stopping a missile equals starting a war. Germany's counterframe is equally blunt. Don't fire at cities, and we won't have to intercept at cities. There's no novelty here, only clarity. After 20 months of strike and counterstrike, the lexicon is set. Defensive systems defend. Offense chooses whether they're needed. In Kiev, the response was swift and specific. Ukrainian officials praised the move as a shield of the free world and emphasized something engineers and air defenders care about more than slogans: integration. Patriots, IRIS-T, NASAMS. These aren't rival brands in a commercial, they're sections of the same wall. Integrating new German Patriots into an existing network of NASAMS and IRIS-T batteries isn't a theoretical exercise.
It's worth remembering how we got to this point with Germany.
The Zeitenwende, the turning point, wasn't a speech. It was a procurement order. Berlin has spent the last 2 years accelerating deliveries, unfreezing budgets, and learning, sometimes painfully, that timelines are a weapon system all their own. Every month shaved off a contract is a month where a city sleeps warmer. This new pledge of more than $2 billion slots into that broader shift from debate to delivery. It tells defense firms to keep the lines warm, tells allied logisticians to reserve the railcars, and tells Ukrainian air defense officers that their planning horizon just moved out another season. Let's get granular on how all these pieces dance together when the sirens start. An early warning network, space, air, ground, spots the launch. That queue flows across networks into sector command posts. Track files populate on multiple screens, and the system begins deconflicting. Who sees what? Who has the right angle?
The communications and EW kit in Germany's package is what makes this choreography repeatable under stress.
Secure, resilient links keep data flowing even when towers are down and the spectrum is crowded with malice. Mesh networking lets units hop information around damage. EW adds the means to redirect or blunt an attack. Jam a drone's link, feed a cruise missile a bad bearing, make a seeker stare at a ghost. None of these effects are magic, and none of them work all the time. But when layered on top of kinetic interceptors, they turn attacks into puzzles. Attackers can solve puzzles. Attackers cannot solve enough puzzles fast enough when the timer is set to seconds. Critics will ask about capacity. Can industry keep up? Can Europe and the United States maintain interceptor production and still refill their own magazines? Those are fair questions, and the honest answer is only with planning that looks 2 winters ahead, not 2 news cycles. Germany's pledge is structured to buy time for exactly that. More IRIS-T rounds on European production lines, a pipeline of Patriot interceptors, more contracts for guidance kits and radar parts, and training capacity that doesn't require calendars to apologize to each other. The plan isn't to sprint forever. It's to sprint until you can jog at a faster pace than before. Training deserves a spotlight. Batteries don't materialize fully formed, they graduate. Crews have to learn what the radar picture looks like when the atmosphere is misbehaving, how to maintain tempo through a long night, how to keep a system hungry but not starving when resupply runs encounter real roads and weather. Ukraine's air defenders have had a crash course taught by necessity, and adding more units means adding more crews ready to make the right call at the wrong hour. That's where the communication suite pays a second dividend, sharing lessons across units at the speed of text, not the pace of rumor. What about the battlefield beyond the skies? Precision-guided artillery munitions and anti-tank weapons won't show up on radar plots, but they will show up on the maps that matter. If a launch site is identified, if a mobile battery thinks it can peek and scoot, precision fires make scoot the more urgent part of that plan. Anti-tank systems layer deterrence along expected axes of advance, punishing any attempt to exploit chaos with a ground push. Remember, air defense without counter-battery is a treadmill. You run, but the scenery doesn't change. Add accurate fires, and suddenly, the scenery does.
Is there a risk of escalation? There's always risk when one side tries to make the other pay a price it doesn't want to pay. Moscow's accusation of direct escalation is performative, but it also signals annoyance at a practical problem. More Patriots and IRIS-T units mean more failed salvos, which mean more wasted money and political capital for less effect. Over time, that pain curve forces choices. Do you spend more on missiles that will be intercepted? Do you hold them back and accept that the lights stay on in Kyiv? Do you shift to other means and face other countermeasures? Escalation is a word. Logistics is a sentence. A quick reality check for the home audience. This isn't cheap and it isn't simple. $2 billion sounds like a headline, but in defense math, it's a basket of moving pieces. Missiles with refurbishment cycles, radars with spare parts, vehicles that need fuel filters and tires, software that demands updates, cables that stubbornly resent mud. The brilliance of the package is that it buys not only effects, but also time, the most precious commodity in a war of attrition. Time for Ukrainian engineers to harden the grid, time for crews to train, for factories to spool up, for new concepts to go from whiteboard to field. If you want to understand the strategic signal, think in seasons. Autumn 2025 is not just about stopping tonight's salvo. It's about shaping winter, which shapes spring, which sets the table for summer. Germany's pledge is a seasonal hedge. Improve interception rates now so infrastructure survives the cold. Make attacks less cost-effective so commanders rethink their playbook. And keep Ukraine's society intact so its military can plan operations without a civilian catastrophe screaming in the background. The most important victories in modern war are sometimes the ones that look like nothing happened. Let's acknowledge the human layer. For Ukrainian families, additional Patriots translates into fewer nights in stairwells and subway stations. Germany's move also threads a needle between European autonomy and alliance coherence. By funding both US origin and European systems, Berlin is saying the quiet part out loud. The priority is capability now, capacity tomorrow. Buy what works today, build what you need for the next round, and stitch it together so it talks. That's not ideology, that's engineering with a passport. If defense cooperation were a dating app, interoperable and emotionally available would be the green flag profile. What will success look like? Not fireworks. Success looks like dashboards with fewer red flags, a winter peak that feels like a plateau, Russian planning cycles that lengthen because their odds shorten, and Ukrainian commanders who can allocate scarce resources with slightly less terror. It looks like news updates that get shorter. In a world addicted to spectacle, the quiet victories are easy to dismiss. But in this war, quiet isn't empty. Quiet is protected. There's also a lesson for the wider world. Every capital that worries about missiles, drones, and long-range fires is watching how Ukraine integrates mixed Western systems under pressure. Germany's package adds a case study for military academies and defense ministries, from the Baltics to the Pacific. Here's how you add a new layer without breaking the old ones. Here's how you harden your comms without isolating units. Here's how you blend kinetic and non-kinetic effects under one roof. In a decade, someone will call this phase a doctrinal revolution. Today, it's just keeping the coffee hot at the operations center. A word on expectations. No package, however well designed, eradicates risk. Some missiles will still get through. Some drones will still find a gap. The goal is not perfection, it's economics. Make the attacker spend 2 to achieve 1, then 3 to achieve 1. Then stop keeping score because the scoreboard is lopsided and boring. That's how strategies end, not with a flourish, but with a shrug, because the cost-benefit equation no longer loves the person paying. And yes, there's a moral dimension. Democracies do not have the luxury of pretending their civilians are collateral. Protecting cities is not just humane, it's strategic. It preserves the very thing you're fighting for, a functioning society with schools open, businesses paying taxes, and people confident enough to plan for the weekend. Air defense is not romance, but it is about keeping promises. Chief among them, the promise that a government will try to keep its people alive. Germany's pledge, wrapped in summit lighting and ministerial soundbites, is ultimately just this: a promise turned into parts. A long-term security commitment made tangible and modular, ready to plug into a system that already knows how to fight. It won't end the war, but it will help ensure that the people fighting it on the right side of history have another winter of breathing room, another spring of opportunity, and another summer where the list of repairs is shorter than the list of dreams. And if you insist on a closing line, take this one.
On that October day in Brussels, Berlin didn't just reach for its wallet, it reached for the wiring diagram of a continent's defense and added new circuits. The lights in Kyiv won't thank anyone, they'll just stay on, which, in the end, is thanks enough.